the mindfulness, to see what is really happening with you in the mind, in the body. All the things that you keep telling yourself, justifications you've been telling yourself to live the kind of life that you've been living, to be doing the things that you've been doing, to choose the things that you've been choosing. But all these things have their causation. If something's happening, there's a cause for it. Usually we're living in oblivion, we don't know. And oftentimes we do not care to know, because it takes effort. Sometimes the most menial, the most insignificant things seem more important than to be curious enough to see what is the state of discontent that I experience within me. Why do I keep thinking the same thoughts? And then complain to myself or to the world that I am experiencing these things. In ancient times, when human beings engaged in questions like these, society would end up calling them wise. There's nothing wrong with being wise in this day and age. In fact, it's a good thing. It's a necessary thing. In this time period of mediocrity, but the Dhamma allows us to break through that, because it gives us understanding, it gives us discernment, the ability to probe, to understand, not for the sake of just plain curiosity, which adds more chit-chat in the mind, but to make room for serenity of mind, collectedness of mind that we call samadhi. Without samadhi, there cannot be nibbana. Without samadhi, there cannot be breaking through ignorance. Samadhi is not old-fashioned, it's not passé, it's not antiquated. It is absolutely necessary in this day and age, because the human brain has lost its ability to maintain its attention on things for more than a few seconds. That is terrible. The nervous system is always experiencing that it is under attack. Always. Trauma is no longer happening with only certain people who have endured some terrible, terrible events. It is something that is collectively being experienced today on a massive, wide, worldwide scale. So we definitely need samadhi today. But you will not be able to practice and experience samadhi in the noisiness of your mind, noisiness of your life, the various activities that you're involved in, the different things that you keep adding up to the list of things that you must do, that you should do, you could do. At the base of this noisiness are what Lord Buddha called the asavas. Asavas. Asavas have been translated in different ways in English: influx, inflow, outflow, cankers. Words that sometimes are very hard to turn them into something relational, something you can understand. And basically, to me, they seemed a little bit intangible. So I chose to use the term mental contaminants, because they contaminate the stability of the mind. They shake you up, they bring you down, they destroy whatever serenity that you have going for you. They make things dirty, corrupt, pollute. But only a mind that is able to actually know samadhi can be able to see asavas the way they are. Otherwise, for an average putujjana, an unevolved, ordinary human being, who doesn't know how to recognize noble disciples, who doesn't know how to recognize the Dhamma, they will look at the asavas as the very salt of life, the very spice of life. If you take those out, the whole thing falls apart. Only a mind that is able to pull itself away and out of the commotion that's going on and that is being promulgated, encouraged into today's society, only such a mind is able to see this. So you sat for about an hour just now. That is medicine. A medicine that your mind needs, your life needs. Literally, your metabolism changes. You allow your heart to rest, your mind to rest, your central nervous system to kind of come to a baseline of functionality instead of always being on the run. So it's necessary, that's what I'm trying to say. What you did is as necessary, if not more, than water. If you don't drink water, for a few days you die. That's a fact. If you don't eat, in fact, some people had not eaten, reportedly, for months. They hadn't died, but they still needed water. But the Dhamma is more important than that in its importance, in its effect, in its necessity for us right now. Even the water that we drink is polluted today, everywhere you go. But the good thing about this meditative practice is that it allows you to purify the mind wherever you are. Wherever you are. You might be on a plane, you might be in a jungle, you might be in the middle of New York City or somewhere really crowded like, I don't know, Calcutta, in a busy street. But if your mind is able to come to that point of stillness, of samadhi, suddenly you find your North Star, your balance. But we don't just meditate for the sake of meditation, like some traditions have said. There's a purpose. This has a path. We call it Magga. Lord Buddha did not just teach Dhamma with different hypotheses just ideas, yeah, try it. I guess maybe it might be good for you type of a thing. It was very specific. It had a goal. It was actually better than today's medicine. The doctor gives you some medication, some prescription, and you ask them, is this going to cure me? They say, well, it's going to reduce your symptoms. And then you turn the packet and you look and you see the side effects. The Dhamma doesn't have such side effects. It's very straight. It's direct. It is no nonsense. It is us who turn it into nonsense when we don't pay enough attention to it. And every one of us has direct access to it, just like Lord Buddha did. So today's sutta is a very well-known sutta among practitioners, and it is the Sabbasava Sutta, a very powerful sutta, if we can call it that, because it really assists us to identify, okay, what do I do with these mental contaminants? How do I work with them? Because every one of us has our own unique ways of dealing with difficulties, difficult friends, people. We deal with different situations in different manners. And if it's going, it's fine. Like when you get an electrical equipment, some tool that comes with a manual, how many of us really reads the manual, especially if it's a thick one? I've never read them personally, and I don't know of anyone who has, unless they are engineers and it's about their thing that they need to, it's a big engine, a motor or something. But what do? We need to use it. What do? We start going at it. We start moving the parts, this and that, and if it works, okay, it's good. I'm figuring it out. The suttas are there to help us not to just blindly go ahead and try to figure things out. Groping in the dark. Okay, that was the light switch. Oop, that was the dog's ear. Okay, no. We work with our eyes open when we're dealing with the Dhamma, when we're working through the Dhamma. There is no guesswork. There's no stuff in there that get us lost. If anything, every sutta pretty much helps us to kind of tweak our trajectory, slowly, just nudging until you find yourself into your lane and you lock on. You lock on. That's why we meditate. That's why we practice sila. That's why we practice samadhi. That's why we practice bhavana. To get us to panya. Panya is the wisdom, the discernment, which every one of us needs if you want to stop suffering. The worst kind of suffering, the one that happens in your mind, the one that you have to deal with if you're born, the one you feel in your heart, and always end up blaming the world for it. Your body, your height, your weight, your in-laws, the world, the climate. There's always some war going on. We need to use maps. We have many maps, but if we don't use them, they're useless. It's not the fault of the map. It's us not using it. It's very simple. You might be starving and you're sitting in front of a refrigerator that is full of food. You're going to starve unless you reach in and try to get something from there to eat. The examples are countless. And we laugh and we giggle at how simple it is, how simple of a solution it is, but when it comes down to practicing something as basic as sila, we say, well, not this time. This time it's okay. Next time. I swear. You want to get up. When you told yourself, I'm going to sit for 1 hour, there's a tiny little twitch, pinch somewhere. It's, oh, that's it, I'm going to get up. Why? What happened? It's the body, it's going to hurt. Every once in a while, there's gravity, it keeps on pulling you down. Big deal. You're not going to die. So all these come from the main culprits. If you want to look at the bottom of it all, we talk about the kileshas, defilements. We talk about the hindrances. You guys know about the hindrances, those of you who are on retreat. They're always here, around you. Always, always on the attack. Meanwhile, they are the best teachers also, if you know how to negotiate with them. But if you look at all this dirt you have to work through, at the bottom, we have these three asavas. Kamasava, bhavasava, avijjasava. Later on, commentators explained or added ditthiyasava. Ditthi is wrong view. But essentially there's only three that Lord Buddha talked about in the suttas. This Sabbasava, the name means all the mental contaminants. All the mental contaminants. Sabba means all. All. Asava is mental contaminants, or influxes if you're attached to the term. In this sutta, Lord Buddha talks about the ways to control, to discipline, and to silence them, even once and for all. Not temporarily. The relief that the Dhamma gives you is not temporary. Otherwise, it would be a drug. It's funny when I read science articles sometimes and I would see, oh, the psychedelics, this and that. Experts say it has the same effect as meditation. Big titles, bombastic claims like that. I wonder who these experts are. Because they don't know what meditation is. The proper way of meditating, that is. If you practice this path, unlike any other teaching out there, it is superlative because it delivers you to the final graduation ceremony, which is arahantship. It delivers. It's not an open-ended, it could be anything type of a thing. You complete the task. You are not the same person as you were. So it's not temporary. The relief you get is not temporary. But you don't have to trust anyone's words. You don't have, this is not a blind faith-based practice. That's why I hesitate to say religion, because it's a practice. Even though many have turned it into rites and ritual kind of a thing, it's not. It is a practice. Only those who practice will taste what I'm talking about. You keep it on the mundane level of rites and rituals, it will never be tasted. It's just temporary relief. It's like somebody who broke his back and you put Bengay or something, or to kind of relieve, some ointment. No, surgery needs to be done. You got to go deep, if you're willing. Most people are not. They want quick fixes. So, there's a term that Lord Buddha talked about, a flood. We have to cross the flood. You have different examples in the suttas. The Eightfold Path, or the Majjhima Pada, or the boat, the raft, that you have to use to go over something. That something is the ogha, the flood. Flood of passions, all kinds of, well, they're all based on the asavas, by the way. So we have to navigate. But the asavas themselves are so, well, they've been with us forever. They almost are like those whirlpools you get, those forceful currents that drag you down. And you think, oh, this must be Mara, this must be something from outside or something that I don't have control over. No, you just don't have sati to see what's really going on. Those are the asavas. They make things complicated because they've been with you forever. Now you have to develop the patience to actually understand this, to see this, to observe this. That's why Lord Buddha insisted on sati sampajanya, full alertness. Everything, the way you move your fingers right now, if you're moving your fingers, observe. Don't write a thesis on it, just observe. Is there a correlation with the mind? Why do I need to move it? Or if you're feeling like blasé or kind of off, where is that coming from? Be curious. Be curious. Satipatthana, basically, the way you can simplify it is be curious. If you don't want to read books and books and books on Satipatthana, just use the words, be curious. About what? Your body, your feelings, your mind, your mental states, and all the different mind objects that keep floating around, including the facts of life, phenomena, anicca, transitoriness of life, the impermanence of life, things you see around you, how sounds are carried, how sights move you in a good way, bad way, neutral. All these things require you to be curious. Otherwise, you will never have known. Lord Buddha would have never been able to figure it out. That's why you need sati. You need to practice meditation, not to achieve some trance-like state where you become like a zombie for a few minutes and hours and then come out and you're the same lousy person. Nothing's changed. This is about change. This path is all about change. And it's very real. It's very real. Lord Buddha was a realist. And his teaching reflects that. That's why you see Lord Buddha says, he who sees me sees the Dhamma. He who sees the Dhamma sees me. Self-explanatory as to the kind of teaching he taught. So the asavas, as we go through them, and we see how Lord Buddha delineated the different ways to deal with the asavas, because sometimes the asavas, given the context, the situations, where we are in life, where we are in our mind, in our emotional state, they might require a different way of relating, a different form of attack, if you will, a different strategy. So the Lord Buddha is giving us several different strategies of how to deal with them. But remember, asavas have a contaminating nature. They're not good. And they're at the bottom of all the akusala things you can ever think of. They're at the base. So this is the Majjhima Nikaya number 2, middle length discourses, Sabbasava, all the mental contaminants. I have personally heard this. At one time, the Blessed One was living at the monastery offered by Anathapindika at Jeta's Grove in the city of Savatthi. There, the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, I will teach you the method of restraining the mind from all the mental contaminants. Now listen carefully and with full attention. Straight away, Lord Buddha just jumps in. I'm going to give you the instruction of how to control the mind. You must control the mind. For any people out there who just don't believe in discipline, and they drive cars, next time tell them, how do they feel if the brakes are off the car? They don't have any brakes. You need the brakes, otherwise you're going to crash. Discipline is that. It allows you to use the brakes at certain times to control. You have a steering wheel to control. We need control. We need discipline. Ourselves and everyone needs this. Society needs this. So Lord Buddha is just straight away jumping in because he's also dealing with human beings, the Sangha members. They're human beings. And when you put them together, you're going to have issues unless they are disciplined. That's how you can keep the peace. Peace in the mind, peace in the individual, peace in the society. Yes, Lord, the bhikkhus responded. Bhikkhus, I declare the wiping out of the mental contaminants takes place within the person who knows and sees, and not in those who do not know and see, but knows what and sees what. It is for the one who knows and sees the difference between wise attention and unwise attention. These two terms you need to really understand. If you notice, the common denominator between these two terms is attention. You always have to give some attention to something at some time. The question is, or the main problem is, that we are often giving attention to the wrong things. That's called ayoniso manasikara. And that's a term that Lord Buddha came up with. It didn't exist before him. Ayoniso manasikara. Yoni is like origin, point of origin. So it's taking you to the roots. It's a radical attention, wise reflection, constantly. And no, you don't have to be secluded in some kuti, in a corner, somewhere, in a temple to be practicing this. No, you could be at work, busy work environment, and you're applying wise reflection throughout. I mean, you're doing it when you're having an important meeting or an important call, especially when you're on an interview, a job interview, for example. You're trying to be at your best game. You're trying to make sure you don't say, behave in any way which could eliminate your chances of being hired. So you're being very, very meticulous. You can think of it in some sense that you do have manasikara there, definitely. Now, when Lord Buddha is using yoniso manasikara, it is looking at facts the way they are without the actual or added tinges, paint brushes of I like this, I don't like this, this is me, this is mine, preferences. And you're using your past experiences. Yeah, if I step over this, I'm going to fall. Remember what happened last week? Okay, so I won't do that. That's yoniso manasikara, very quickly. Protects you. Protects you. When you control the mind, you're protecting yourself. When you practice sila, you're controlling your mind. What are you doing? You're protecting yourself when you're practicing sila. Not just you, you're protecting everyone else around you. People are not afraid of you, that you're going to go crazy and kill everyone if you're angry, because you take precepts. They can come to you and they can trust you. When you tell them something, I won't do this, and you take the precept, they feel comfortable around you that this person is not going to lie. You don't even have to present a piece of paper that says, this person shall never break this thing, because they've seen you again and again. You protect them also. That requires control. So I would love for you to approach the controlling of the asavas in that manner as well. So, restraining the asavas. So one is yoniso manasikara, the other one is ayoniso. Ayoniso means it is, obviously it's unwise, and also it creates disorderliness because of it. A perfect example is someone who gets drunk. First drink, second drink, third drink, and then they grab hold of their keys and get into their car. Did you see what happened? The chain of events. Ayoniso manasikara from the start, when they walked into the bar, when they could have gone somewhere else. Or they could have just said, no, just water. Or soda. So, ayoniso manasikara involves contemplation, but with a wrong direction. It does not concern itself with anything that is wholesome, ultimately. It's just, what is going to give me most gratification right now? So it's very blind, it's very ignorant. That's why we call it avidya. And conversely, yoniso would be the correct contemplation with direction that is wholesome. So, and Lord Buddha explains further, for when giving unwise attention, the not yet arisen defilements arise in one, and the arisen defilements continue growing, kileshas. Because if you don't pay attention, that means you left the door open for all the rats to come in from the street. Another way of looking at control or discipline is having a door. In fact, not just any door, but a door with a lock on it. Anyone who doesn't believe in control or discipline, tell them next time to go to sleep while leaving their front door and gate wide open. And their bedroom door wide open. And their children's doors wide open. See if they can even go to sleep for half a second. I say this because we're living in a society where people are becoming very hypersensitive and even anti anybody who talks about control, discipline, morality. In America, if you talk about morality, immediately they gently place you in a box. It's not appealing. They don't like the word morality for decades. Ethics is more or less acceptable because you can still do a lot of unwholesome things that still be within the quotation marks of ethics in this corrupt society we live in. But when giving attention wisely, the not yet arisen defilements do not arise, whereas the already arisen defilements simply fade and disappear. It's like the dam suddenly has a crack in it. And it starts spilling. The water starts coming out. And you say, it's okay, it's just a small hole. What's the big deal? That's what we do. That's what we do with our defilements. Yeah, it's a small lie. I mean, come on. What's the big deal? So I took $10 or 10 ringgits. It's not a big deal. It is. And that becomes, the small lie becomes another lie, and another lie. And it's a snowball, right? Now you're going to cover the other lie with a new lie. And another lie to cover that one. Lord Buddha clearly states in the Suttas, a person who lies, when they close their eyes for the last time, their place is hell. They will end up in hell. A liar will end up in hell. That's how serious it is. Because if you can lie, you can do all the rest. Everything else you could do, every single one of the precepts you can break, because you can lie. And our culture today around the world, it has become expert at coming up with lies. In fact, it is promoted. The leaders promote this of different countries, different organizations. religious figures. So don't fall into that and see. That's why Lord Buddha is saying, whatever is arisen even if it's a defilement, if you see it, even if it's arisen, it's up, it's there. You see it, you give it yoniso manasikara, attention, wise attention, it will die in front of you because you're looking at it carefully. It will stop. And the new ones, the new rats will not come because you close the door. That's the power of yoniso manasikara. So in this, we are going to see Lord Buddha talking about 7 different ways of wiping out, eliminating the asavas, addressing them. So he starts listing them. In this way, bhikkhus, there are mental contaminants that are to be relinquished through seeing or vision. Dassana. You have to see it. A person who has strong wrong views, guess what? You can point the big spotlight on the fact that you're seeing and everyone else sees, but if they're attached to that wrong view, you will not be able to budge them from that point of view. Because they have wrong view. They're rooted in wrong view. That's why it's such a powerful thing. A person can say or claim that believe that they're practicing the Dhamma, but if they're established on the wrong view, coming from wrong view, that's very difficult. That's why Lord Buddha placed right view as number 1 on the Eightfold Path, if you recall. That's number 1. We have to get that right from the start. I would describe it like you're going somewhere and on your phone or the GPS on Waze or somewhere, you're putting in the right destination. If you don't, it will take you somewhere else. Very simple. So from the very start, right view has to be right. The right GPS direction has to be placed in. But if the person has wrong view, they can come and meditate. They can even listen to this sutta, this marvelous sutta. They will hear what they want to hear. Interesting. Right? So dassana, you have to have the ability to see what is what. There are mental contaminants that are to be relinquished through restraint. Sangvara. Sangvara. You have to restrain. There are mental contaminants that are to be relinquished through properly utilizing. Patisevana. Properly using. And you're going to see why that term. Remember, Lord Buddha is talking to bhikkhus. For the most part, at least in the beginning stages of the Dhamma, of the Sasana, Lord Buddha was mostly talking to bhikkhus. So many of the instructions have the bhikkhus as the audience. So it has to be very distinct, specific for that kind of a lifestyle. So bear that in mind, because sometimes you come across suttas and it's like, what is that? So don't put it in a different category immediately. Try to understand the contextual elements surrounding the sutta, always. There are mental contaminants that are to be relinquished by endurance. Adivasana. There are mental contaminants that are to be relinquished through avoidance. Parivajjana. There are mental contaminants that are to be relinquished through uprooting or dispelling. Vinodana. And there are mental contaminants that are to be relinquished by cultivating. Bhavana. So now after, he's such a teacher. He's just incredible teacher. He explains it briefly in a paragraph. It's very brief, but you get the idea what he's talking about, the classifications. And then he says, okay, now let's go one after the other. Let's open and unfold this. Here we go. And what bhikkhus are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through seeing? Dassana pahatabba. Pahatabba is the relinquishment, the wiping out of the asava. In this case, dassana, by seeing. Bhikkhus, here you may think of a common unevolved person, putujjana, who is unable to recognize the noble ones, someone who is unintelligent, neither disciplined nor learned in the Dhamma of the superior beings. Someone who does not know nor able to discriminate between the thoughts that should be given attention to and the thoughts that are unfit for attention. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every internal monologue deserves your attention. Not every feeling deserves your attention, no matter how many decades you spent validating it, putting it on its golden throne in your mind, saying this is untouchable, this is a fact. No, it's not. Be able to question. Understand, is this fit or is this unfit? In this way, he goes on thinking thoughts that are unfit and should not be given attention to, while neither appreciating nor giving attention to those thoughts that deserve attention. And what bhikkhus are the thoughts that should not be given attention to? So he's explaining now what happens with ayoniso manasikara, and the mechanism behind it, and why you shouldn't be doing it. These are thoughts that, when attention is given to them, will lead to the arousal of the not yet arisen mental contaminant for sensual lust, as well as the thoughts that inflame the already arisen mental contaminant for sensual lust. This would be someone who says, you know, I'm happily married. I'm just giving a rough example that just popped into my head. I'm happily married, I'm okay, I don't need to be exposed to anything vulgar or something like that. But the next time they're scrolling through YouTube or online or something, they see something, a naked picture of someone provocative, they allow that. They say, it's okay, it's nothing. It's okay. The next time they see, they start to look 2 pictures. And they will, quote-unquote, refine their taste. Yeah, this one's not as good as the other one. Okay, let's look at something that looks that. Already, you're going into a downward spiral. And you see this a lot these days. Even as a therapist, I would see people coming and patients, when I was a layman, and describing how they're, as parents, for example, dealing with children that are watching pornography, or partners. Video games also, it doesn't have to be something as vulgar as that, but it could be video games. Something that I find disturbing was, years ago, we thought that guys would be the only ones who play video games. And kids, mostly. And then the first information, or the first cases came in where you were seeing guys, people, men in their 30s, 40s, 50s playing video games. But the startling fact was you were also seeing women of the same age group doing it. And then they say, well, I'm very agitated. And then you would hear sometimes neighbors yelling across the street, and you think they're fighting. No! They're actually playing the video game live with a headset with other gamers across the world. They're drinking alcohol, they're eating, now they have diabetes, they're fat, obese, unhealthy, both physically, emotionally, mentally. It all started by, hey, why don't you just play this game? You know, you see it on Google or something, an app. Yeah, try this. And the person is bored. You know what boredom is, right? Meditators? Right? Yes. And that's how papanchas come along. Simply because you were bored. You have to maintain yoniso manasikara. There's no ifs and buts about that. Also, thoughts that when attention is given to them will lead to the arousal of the not yet arisen mental contaminant for rebecoming. Rebecoming is almost, you can think of it as craving. Because yeah, this was good, but let me try that one. Let me try that one. If you've ever gone to a sweet shop, you know, to buy cakes and things, you want to try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But yeah, but let me try that one over there. That looks very interesting. Always the next one, the next one. That explains your birth in this life. It's the result of you going, oh, the next one, oh, the next one. You go to an elderly home or nursing home or the hospital when people are dying, you just go and look in their eyes and there's so much greed for the next one, for the next one. Yeah. When my father was very, very, well, sick, I looked at him and I said, and I wanted to help, of course, as a son, and said, Dad, if I had the ability, I would give you my body. For a millisecond, I could see in his eyes, he went, yeah. And I had asked him that question about 5 or 7 years earlier, when he was much healthier at his house. And I asked him, what would you do, Dad, if I had some abilities, let's say, some magic happened, and you and I switched bodies? And his eyes just opened. It's like, whoa, all the things that I would do. And, I mean, he said certain things. The sensual lust came out. Because he was a handsome man when he was young. He was an artist, all these things. So he had lived a full life. But he still had the same zest. And he was nearing his 80s. Re-becoming, re-becoming. That's what you are always seeing when the person is dying. How many times have you seen a person says, you know what, this is it. I don't want to come back again. I've never heard that. I'd like to get a body that's healthy. Or, you know, again, and again, and again, and again. And that is ignorance. That means that the person doesn't have wise attention. Yoniso manasikara is absent completely. So, as well as the thoughts that intensify the already arisen mental contaminant for rebecoming. Similarly, thoughts that when attention is given to them, it will lead to the arousal of the not yet arisen mental contaminant for ignorance, as well as the thoughts that proliferate the already arisen mental contaminant for ignorance. A best example of that is something like a person stands and even a drug addict, you look at them, or homeless individuals you would see on the streets of the United States or any part of the world for that matter. When you go and speak to them, when you ask them questions, they weren't always like that, you know. They had a home, they had a life, they were in relationships, they were cared for by others, but then something happened where they said, yeah, it's okay. And then it was another, yeah, it's okay. So you're sacrificing, you're giving up, you're compromising your principles. And that's what happens when a person breaks their sila. That's another reason why I immediately instruct you, go ahead, if you've broken a sila, instead of sitting in the sewage of remorse, regret, quickly retake the sila if you intend on not breaking it the next time if the situation arose again. Quickly, don't waste time. You stole something, fine. Either go confess, tell the person, or when no one's looking, go and put it back there as if nothing happened. Okay? Happy? And then retake the sila of not doing it again. Maybe it's too embarrassing. You might lose a job or something. Or when you lie. Or any of the other sila. Quickly fix it without letting it to break even further. These are the thoughts that should not be given attention to. And what bhikkhus are the thoughts that should be given attention to? Now we're seeing the yoniso part. Lord Buddha is explaining. He's always going to tell you, there's this and there's that. And if this is the healthier one, he's going to explain why. He never expects you to believe him, just like that. These are thoughts that when attention is given to them will not lead to the arousal of the not yet arisen mental contaminant for sensual lust. And because it's a long sutta, I'm just going to, because it's a repeat of each of these segments for the different asavas, so I will explain it. I will read those sections. Also, thoughts that when attention is given to them will not lead to the arousal of the not yet arisen mental contaminant for re-becoming. Ignorance. Meanwhile, the thoughts that would have intensified the already arisen mental contaminant for re-becoming or ignorance simply fade away. Because you are paying attention now. You're closing the door. You are not allowing the rats to come in. Right? Or mosquitoes to fly through. If you have a screen, you close it. If you've ever gone camping, you keep a light there, or you're sitting inside the tent and you haven't zipped it up. The tent, you'd be surprised, so many different organisms that will make that place their new home. And you will become their supermarket, grocery store. Similarly, thoughts that when attention is given to them will not lead to the arousal of not yet risen mental contaminant for ignorance. So yeah, we read that. These are the thoughts that should be given attention to. But as a result of giving unwise attention to the thoughts that should not be thought, while not giving wise attention to thoughts that should be thought, the not yet arisen mental contaminants will continue to sprout and grow. So it's not a matter of, oh, I shouldn't give attention to unwholesome things. That's good, but it's halfway. If you've ever planted, if you've ever done any gardening, you might have weeds and things growing in your front yard, or you just have a pot of soil inside a pot, a clay pot, something like that, a vase. And you remove it, you uproot it, you eradicate it, and then you leave it like that. Guess what's going to happen in a few days or weeks? Unless you replace it with something, whatever it is that you want to plant. Maybe it's mint leaves, maybe it's a gardenia, maybe it's a rose bush, something. But you must replace it. That's what we're seeing here. It's not enough to not have ayoniso manasikara, but you need to have yoniso manasikara towards the correct things, the thoughts that will enhance your life. Because the person who is looking at, let's say, vulgar images or porn or something like, or playing video games, if you remove that, that's a big problem of the addiction programs that they run, the rehab programs. They never substitute it with something wholesome. We have the 12-step program, which became famous in the 50s, 60s until now in the US and the rest of the world. Alcoholics Anonymous, that's how it started. Well, in it, it's a 12-step program, and in it they believe in a divine power to come and somehow assist the person so that next time they're weak, they will rely on this non-present entity. And you might have a strong faith, you might be able to pull it off a few times, but if your addiction is very, very strong, good luck. Because what happens is they fall face down, this time harder. They will not drink just one bottle now. They will drink 2 or 3. And they will have, well, they need a new liver. So you need to substitute it with something wholesome. So it's not a passive, that's what I keep telling you. It's not a passive affair, the Dhamma. It's a practice, but you have to remove the bad and you need to put the good in, basically. You need to remove the akusala and place it with kusala. So when you're practicing sila, what are you doing else in addition to that? I'm teaching you metta. What is metta? You're filling up yourself with loving kindness. You're healing, you're forgiving yourself. Next, what are you doing? You're sharing that metta with another human being. No wonder Lord Buddha taught metta hundreds and hundreds of times in the suttas. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? So, and such a person will go on, this is the person who is using unwise attention. Such a person will go on reflecting as he thinks unwisely in this manner. Was I in the past or wasn't I in the past? These are people that call themselves philosophers, usually. You know, they sit in cafes and smoke cigars, look intelligent, wear black, maybe turtlenecks. You know, you see them in the 19th century images, paintings, you know, very famous people we have in the West. I mean, we worship them, basically. Not just in the West, of course. Who was I in the past? How was I in the past? That's a good one. Sometimes people come and say, Bhante, can you tell me who was I in the past? Do you know who you are now? How much fun are you now? Why would we be interested in who you were back then, if this is what we're dealing with? Will I exist in the future? That's another one. You have entire branches of the Dhamma, Buddhism, dedicated to this. Oh, I want to be born in the Western paradise. Do you know about the Eastern paradise? Why West? Why not Northern? These are all later additions. Nonsense. Nonsense. People just wanted to make money, collect money from the faithful who did not want to practice. They themselves didn't practice, and people just were paying money. You're building castles instead of temples with the money that you're generating. You still have them. You have them now, especially in Asia. Right? You know them. Because of this quest. I know someone who does past life regression type of therapy, hypnotherapy. Her business suddenly started booming when she came to Asia. She's never gone out of work. She's so famous now because everybody's dying to know who they were before they died. Think about that. That's a person with wrong view. Well, will I be in the future? How would I be in the future? And by having become what, who will I become in the future? All about asmimana. It's the conceit I am. That's what we're dealing with. This is me, this is mine, this is who I am, this is myself. That's what you're dealing with. That is why it is one of the hardest things to uproot from a person. Because this is what we call wrong view. The person can go and get 2 or 3 PhDs in the Dhamma, okay, Buddhism. And they can sit down and talk to you about wrong view forever. While they're in wrong view, in the sewage of wrong view, talking to you about wrong view. So, it's very difficult to see these things. Or uncertainties about the present arise in him. Am I existing now? Or am I not? You have philosophers today. In fact, technology is moving towards, we talked about this, AI. They're openly discussing this as, transhumanism is what they're talking about. Humans and robots are going to come together, and it's like it's accepted. It's supposed to be enough of a reason for these people to be sent to psychiatric wards. Yeah, what's his name? Tesla, a guy, Elon Musk, is pushing for people to have chips implanted in their heads. I wonder if he's okay with having that be done to one of his daughters, or his boys, as he watches the operation. Would he be okay with that? I'm just curious. So there's such a lack of humanity in people. And that's what happens when you have this movement of reductionism going on from the beginning of the 19th century, 20th century. It's been festering in our societies. We've become nothing but, in their minds, a machine That's why they're thinking openly, oh, a human being is no better than a robot. Some years ago, Garry Kasparov, who was known as the top chess player, they put him in front of Deep Blue, which was a robot, IBM, to play. The first time he didn't win, the machine. Next time, the following time, the machine learned. Oh, so the machine is better than us. Immediately, that's what the stupid brain thinks. Oh, they're better than us, so we are less. Well, how did the machine even get started? Who put the information in the machine? Who programmed it? Who put the algorithms in the robot? We don't think about these things. It's, oh, ayoniso manasikara. Lord Buddha talked about this 2,600 years ago. And we're seeing now in full bloom, sadly. How was it that I am? Where did this being come from to get here, and where is it going? That's another thing. Bhikkhus, for someone thinking unwisely in this matter, one of the 6 wrong views arises. He ponders and gets established in the view, I am because I have a self. I absolutely exist. Or he ponders and gets established in the view, I have no self, therefore my existence is not absolute. I remember there was a very famous philosopher who made a big name for himself, Christopher Hitchens, a British philosopher. He was an atheist and all, you know, anything that had to do with the other, the supramundane, he would question it, and he was very good at rhetoric, argumentation. To his last days, he was like, you know, I have no self, I have no self. That's, by the way, that also opens you up to the animal realm for your next birth. If you have ignorance, earlier I was talking about lying. If you lie or steal, your place is hell. Okay? Know that. Not a maybe, no. There it is. You have a zip code waiting for you. In the case of a person who lives in ignorance or with wrong view, if you haven't done the lying and the killing and stealing, if you haven't done those, your place is nicely, comfortably prepared in the animal realm, because the mind, that's what prepares it. Because you enjoy being in ignorance. Okay? And remember, we have hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of different types of animals we're dealing with. Some are far less intelligent than others. A dolphin is much smarter than, let's say, a cricket. Right? So that is, in case you're wondering, what distinguishes. The ignorance or the unwillingness to learn, to probe, to understand, to apply wisdom gets you prepared for an animal birth in your next life. So asking questions, healthy, good questions, helps us to not end up as animals. So it's a good thing to ask questions. Okay? Or he ponders and gets established in the view, thanks to having a self, I am able to know that I have a self. All wrong views. Or he ponders and gets established in the view, because I have a self, I am able to know that which does not have a self. Because I have a self, I can identify something that doesn't have a self. Or he ponders and gets established in the view, I am able to know that which has a self through the means of not having a self. So I don't have a self, but I'm able to identify someone who has a self. These were views in India at the time. Philosophical schools, legitimate schools in India. And you can actually see elements of that also in Greek philosophy. Or he ponders and gets established in the view, it is because I have a self that I am able to speak, feel, experience the results of both good and bad while in the various realms of existence. Therefore, this self of mine is both permanent and unchanging, and as such, it does not perish nor die, living forever eternally. That is the view of a Brahma. In fact, one time Baka is a Brahma god. And he was looking at his domain, and he's a Maha-Brahma. And he's just mesmerized by his life because he's seen so many big bangs, so many existences come and go. He's like, look at me. I'm eternal. I am God. Wow. At that moment, Lord Buddha picks up his thought. Immediately he shows up. He says, Baka, you're neither eternal, nor do you have a self that is not going to be extinguished. This role that you have, this position. So, of course, Baka, because you become arrogant. So don't think that ignorance is only for individuals who are human. When you have that much prestige, power, long life, where your lifespan is in billions of years, in fact, longer than that, you start believing what you're seeing. Just like many of you believe the things that you're thinking when you're meditating or when you're living. So the same thing even for a Brahma god who believes that he is eternal, because other beings have come and gone, including lower devas. So how can you technically blame such a person? Unless there happens to be a Buddha. He was lucky to have a Buddha around. And Lord Buddha comes and teaches him a lesson. And Baka says, of course, I'm omniscient. I'm omnipresent. I know everything. He says, oh, you do, really? He says, okay, let's have a game here. You go ahead in this vast existences that you are the master of, go ahead and hide. Let's see if you can hide from me. He says, oh, that's not a problem at all. Disappears, Baka disappears. He goes at the bottom of some solar systems, one planet's oceans, deep under in the sand, miles deep under the ocean floor. Lord Buddha says, what are you doing? I'm watching you. Catches him. He goes flying as a bird in another universe. He says, are you done fluttering around? I'm watching you. So he does this a few times and he gives up. And he says, okay, your turn. Let's see how you're going to do, and I will find you, he says. He says, okay. Lord Buddha disappears. Baka goes around every single nook and cranny in different existences. He's looking. Finally, he gives up. He says, okay, Gautama, where are you? Reveal yourself. He's back in his Brahma realm. He's like, where are you? Show yourself. I can't find you. And he says, Baka, look up. He looks up and he sees Lord Buddha doing chankama, walking meditation. He says, I was walking over your head all this time and you couldn't even see me. And I was in your domain. I didn't leave. Baka realizes this and he bows down and he admits his mistake. And he accepts Dhamma from Lord Buddha. That is crucial to remove the ignorance from the mind. That's what meditation teaches us. Teaches us that we must relinquish our arrogance. That is a big problem. I see that a lot with meditators. In Dhamma circles, I see that so much. Whether it's a upasaka or in robes. The Dhamma has to be the supreme leader in one's heart. Nothing else. Not your ideas about the Dhamma, not your teacher, nothing. Bhikkhus, this is called having a speculative view, the jungle thicket of speculations, the barren wasteland of speculations, the trap of wrong views, the binding fetter of views. O bhikkhus, fettered by these views, the common unevolved person is not released from birth, old age and death, sorrow, not freed from wailing, depression, pain, and anguish. Therefore, he is not released from suffering, I say. On the other hand, bhikkhus, you may also think of a noble disciple who is able to recognize the noble ones, someone who is intelligent, being both disciplined and learned in the Dhamma of the superior beings, the Buddhas. Someone who does know and is able to discriminate between the thoughts that should be given attention to and the thoughts that are unfit for attention. In this way, he goes on abstaining from giving attention to thoughts that should not be given attention to, while appreciating and giving attention to those thoughts that deserve attention. One of the quickest ways that you can neutralize, pacify the mind when you have a thought that's running around you in your brain, ask this very simple question: how is this helping me now? Just ask. And like I used to tell my patients, because once I was running out of options with this one particular patient, because they were always coming up with a lot of mental jargon. Like, yeah, but what about this? They had read a lot of things, but they're in misery. Okay, how about this? Just a simple thing that you can carry with you. Next time you're caught in this forest of, like, jungle of just unhappiness, ask yourself this thinking that I'm having, this speech that I'm having in my head, how is this helping me now? Ask yourself this. You can even mentally write it on your palm and put it in front of you. How is this helping me now? And put your hand next to your ear just to listen. And if you hear nothing but crickets, meaning that it's not helping you, don't follow that line of thought. But if you ask the question and there is plenty of answers, well, if I do this, my self-esteem is going to get better, or my stamina, or if I sit longer, or if I'm too attached to sleep, let's say, and now on this retreat I have to wake up at 5, and I don't want to, or I don't want to sit, what if I wake up at 4? Oh, that's blasphemy. No, let's try it. 4, why not? There are people who get up at 4, in fact, wake up at 3, some, bread makers, bakers. Early. And they're refreshed and they make delicious bread. Not bad. So maybe I could get up. So already, is this helping you now? Getting up early? So already, and when you do get up earlier and earlier, you're not attached anymore. You're strong, you're refreshed, your eyes are like, boom. And you get up and it's like you walk into the Dhamma hall, or you do walking meditation outside and it's like, whoa. You feel like maybe baka. Right? But with good reason this time. So, push. But always ask, is this helping me now? And where's the Dhamma in this? That's another way of asking. Is this helping the Dhamma in me to understand the Dhamma? Ask that. Or is it the same old stories you keep telling yourself and get nowhere? So, and what bhikkhus are the thoughts that should not be given attention to? So here we see the same formula, but now the individual that Lord Buddha is talking about is the one, the noble disciple, who has yoniso manasikara. So earlier we were talking about the patujjana who doesn't have that. In fact, he has ayoniso manasikara and the damages that person causes themselves. So I'm not going to read those sections because it's a repeat, but it's in the sutta. It's there available. I posted it yesterday, and I see some of you have already printed it. And now, remember, the Patujjana was thinking what kind of wrong view, thoughts that were based on wrong view. Do I exist now? Did I exist? Should I exist? Will I exist? All that nonsense. In the case of a noble disciple, because they're paying proper attention, they have wise attention, yoniso manasikara, the reflection is going to be completely different. And for such a noble disciple, the following reflection occurs as he applies wise attention. This is suffering. No questionability, no guesswork. You identify if there is suffering or if there isn't. This is suffering. Applying his wise attention further, he reflects, this is the cause and reason for suffering. First noble truth, second noble truth. So the person feels if there's this pain, like ulcer-like pain in their gut, every time they walk into an office or somewhere, meet someone, they will not just hold that pain and feel miserable for the rest of the day. They will immediately ask, there's pain. Simple. Second question would be, why? Why is there pain? That's the second noble truth. Why is the pain arising? Reasonable, right? Continuing on applying his attention wisely, he reflects, this is the ending of suffering. Once you understand, every time I walk in, I realize that I've been doing the same job for 35 years. And I'm just here because of the money, or the PTO that I get, or the vacations that I get paid, or the medical insurance they gave me. Meanwhile, every single day of my life, I hated this job because I want to go and paint, for example, or I want to go sailing, or I want to learn how to weave, or be a tailor, or be a woodworker, carpenter. And they light up. Suddenly the pain is gone. That is Nirodha. Third noble truth. Poof. But it's not enough to have that realization. Now you need to apply the Magga, the steps necessary to get to that point of Nirodha fulfilled in your life. You have to take the right steps. Sit down and ask yourself, do I really need this job? Well, I have enough money. I don't have to be in this lousy job. I don't like the way the boss treats everyone. It's toxic. Now I see why. Already you apply right speech, at least with yourself. Right action means writing that resignation letter. Do you want to continue having ulcers or maybe cancer in a few days because of this? Life is too short. Maybe it's time for you to go sailing or start building that table you always wanted to carve, for example. And with further application of his wise attention, he reflects, this is the way to the ending of suffering. I already explained that. When he carefully and wisely thinks in this manner, 3 fetters come loose within him. 3 sangyojanas drop. They don't drop, they don't get a saw or a knife or a scissors. It drops. Because they're doing every other step correctly. And the fetters are expelled from his heart. The view of having an unchanging and substantial self, that's the first sangyojana, the first fetter, Sakkaya Ditthi. Doubts, second, Vichikicca, and the belief in rites and rituals, Silabbata Paramasa, as ways for liberating oneself, drop. And the person is never the same again. Such a person has right view because they have become a Sotapanna, basically. Because these are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through seeing. So you see, through seeing, dasana, the person can become a Sotapanna. We don't even have to go through the other 6 of the 7 ways of addressing the asavas, you see. If you're really wise and you have yoniso manasikara, you can already become a Sotapanna. If you apply this in your life, don't expect the Sotapatti to happen by the auspices of someone else, through the intermediation of someone else. It is the doorway, the key, the path is in your life already. You have the manual, you have the tools, you just have to do it. By taking Sila, Samadhi, Panya with you everywhere you go. It's nowhere else. No teacher is going to give you that. But you do have some major assets. The biggest one is your life. You're still alive. You're still looking at me. You have life. Do it. Don't waste time. That's why I insist, any Dhamma talk that doesn't have as its pinnacle Sangvega, that is no Dhamma talk. That does not belong to the sasana. That has nothing to do with Lord Buddha's teaching. It has to have Sangvega as its spine. Sangvega, number 1. Anything else is nonsense. as far as I'm concerned, because they're delaying, and they are taking it for granted as if you're going to live forever. Are you? Baka couldn't even. Now we get to the second one. And what bhikkhus are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through restraint? Sangvara pahatabba. Here, bhikkhus, you may think of a bhikkhu who applies wise attention as he lives restrained in his eye faculty. Again, he's talking to bhikkhus. This is not just for bhikkhus. We have eyes, don't we? Every one of us. So apply this to where your eyes are looking at. Earlier I gave the example of someone scrolling through their phone and seeing some images or things. News is another one. People come and say, I feel negative, I feel so toxic. And I was like, yeah, what do you listen to? What do you watch? If you're on Facebook and always looking at the worst things that human beings can produce, what do you think is going to be doing to you? It's going to drag you down to that same frequency, level of disgust. And you're going to be having that in your body. For if one were to live unrestrained in their eye faculty, soon enough burning and unsettling desires would certainly arise within, causing him much distress and vexation, whereas none of these troublesome experiences could ever take place within the bhikkhu who lives with his eye faculty restrained. Now that doesn't mean that you need to walk around with like shutters in front of your eyes. That's why we have sati. That's why we have yoniso manasikara. You will see certain things. Years ago, I noticed, as a layman, I would notice the clothing attire in sports activities. Because I used to be a trainer years ago, and I would see at the gym, as I would train people, I would see people coming and going, and I would see, especially in the case of women, the clothing were getting scantier and like less and less and less and less and less and more flesh. And then I saw something similar to that while people were running outside on the streets. And the eyes, where do you think are they going to look? Why do you think they designed such outfits? And by the way, it's no longer women, of course. It's across the board. Why do they dress like that? Well, because they still have some clothing. Imagine everybody went naked. Would anyone look at each other, you think? There's nothing hidden anymore. The mystery is gone. Right? It's blasé. It's like, oh, so what? But on one hand, they hide, but on the other, they want to expose just in certain way. Well, the eyes are going to look. I remember in the 80s, 90s, early 90s and late 80s, when rap music, it's not music actually, rap noise came about, people were like very disgusted by it. As a layman, I would watch like music award shows, things like that. And some jazz musicians, very well-known jazz musicians, African-American legends, got up on stage as they were receiving their awards. They said, by the way, just in case you didn't know, our position towards rap isn't music, it's not art. Okay? End of story. They walked out. Well, that has changed tremendously. They called artists. You look at the lyrics, you listen at the lyrics. I remember in the early 90s, parents used to come and while I would be, let's say, I was a jewelry designer, I would speak with people, talk with people, do counseling without knowing. And then I would hear people talking to me about how they're disturbed when their children are listening to this very vulgar speech, talk, singing, words, lyrics, demeaning women, calling them names, killing people. But people didn't stop that. They put like R rating or something like that, restricted, but what that means is the price is going up and more people are going to buy it. It's like cigarettes, right? It's one of the fastest techniques to actually increase your sales. But that's what's happening. So who has control over this? You're expecting the advertising agencies to? The politicians to? The television? Commercials? No, you hold the only sole responsibility to control what's coming in. Eyes are number one. Don't forget, I gave the example of music, right? That's the ear. But that wasn't enough. MTV came on in the early 80s, and everything, now the music turned into visual, right? So now they were personifying whatever the lyrics were, plus the music, which is not music. It doesn't elevate the spirit. It doesn't make the person, transforms them to improve the quality of life, to improve the quality of relationships, to bring beauty in life. So we are responsible to do those things. Whereas none of these troublesome experiences could ever take place within the bhikkhu who lives with his eye faculty restrained. And the same thing will be applying to the, obviously, ear faculty. And because I'm still only halfway, so I have to really go faster than this. It's a long sutta. And the same with the nose faculty, tongue faculty, body faculty, and finally the mind faculty. For if one were to live unrestrained in their mind faculties, soon enough burning and unsettling desires would certainly arise within, causing him much distress and vexation, whereas none of these troublesome experiences could ever take place within the bhikkhu who lives with his mind faculty restrained. If you put yourself out there, expose yourself to different things that don't agree with your principles, that's going to be affecting you. One of the easiest things that we can do to stop us from being dragged down into negativity is to either completely not have a television at home, or at the very least stop listening or watching the news. Because 99, actually probably 100% now, of the news is negative. We carry the negativity with us in our relationships. So in the old days, when the parents would watch the news, and then let's say they're sitting to have the dinner with the children, they're going to be affected by what they saw. And usually it's bombastic, very heavy-duty imagery, things that will shake you at your roots. It has an emotional impact, and that comes from the basis of commercials that they discovered in the 19th century. You want to sell something, you have to make the person emotionally feel the need for it. That's the basis of capitalism, commercialism. But the same thing with the news. Once there was a newspaper, the person said, I'm going to make a newspaper that will only report on great and positive news. Nothing negative. Everybody, there was like suddenly 2,000 subscribers, and it was only talking about positive things in the small town. By the way, so-and-so helped this so-and-so neighbor with the garbage. So-and-so's car broke down and 2 other neighbors or this person came in and helped them. So things that are uplifting. Guess what happened within less than 6 months? The subscribers gave up because it wasn't moving them emotionally. People want to be jolted. So if you want to be calm, practice samadhi properly, stop watching the news. Not just the news, I mean, not just TV, because we have TVs. The phone, this, what is that? So, yeah. And next we go to this. So, bhikkhus, these are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through restraint. And what bhikkhus are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through properly utilizing patisevana pahatabba? This is specifically targeting bhikkhus. Okay? Because it's all about properly utilizing, using properly. And specifically, you're going to see Lord Buddha's talking about the 4 requisites that we have. The alms food, the robes, the dwelling, and the medicine. You're not using any of these things for luxury, to hoard, to possess, add a collection. None of that. He's teaching bhikkhus. Remember, at the time, Lord Buddha had, as Siddhartha, had done severe austerities. That was in Jainism. They would shun food, robes, the naked ascetics. Jainism, Nigantanatha Buddha's tradition. Sadhus in India, you still go, do you see them? So they were bad. They were looked at as bad things. Lord Buddha practiced that as Siddhartha. And he saw that that's far extreme. So he's teaching the bhikkhus here to use it wisely, the robes, to cover yourself, to keep yourself from the mosquitoes and the flies and other things, to use it for, keeping warm at night. The same with food. We have a prayer, we say, not a prayer, a chant, as bhikkhus. After we do the blessings, we have to do our own check-in with the mind. That the food I'm about to eat, it is not for beautification. It is not for passion, meaning, oh, I'm going to devour this. This is my favorite food. I was waiting for this. I've been eating gruel all my life. Now I get my finally. No. You're watching the mind doing these things. You take a pause, you look, you see. So now you're no longer sucked into the food. The same thing with lodging. You see it as a place to live, period. You don't think about the colors changing, adding different fixtures, new chandeliers, new carpeting, no changing it, always keeping busy. None of that business. In the medicine, the same thing. Here, bhikkhus, you may think of a bhikkhu who applies wise attention as he lives while properly utilizing his robes only for the purposes of dispelling the cold, the heat, the sting of gadflies, the biting of mosquitoes, protection against the wind, and to ward off heat, snakes, and the touch of other creeping things, as well as to cover up one's private parts, while also being considerate of others. Similarly, the bhikkhu applies wise attention as he lives while properly utilizing his alms food, which he consumes but does not do so for amusement, or for intoxication, or to gain physical beauty, but merely to support and nourish the body, without greedily looking for tastes and flavors, but simply to minimize any unnecessary physical hardship as he continues being supported by the food he eats in leading the holy life. It is simply fuel to live and to accomplish the goal of the holy life. So, my wish that every one of us bhikkhus applies this. Thus, while partaking of the alms food, the bhikkhu reflects. By giving up earlier feelings, this is our portion of the chant that we do. By giving up earlier feelings, may I no longer arouse new ones as I live a healthy life that remains blameless, thereby living with contentment and at peace. So, similarly, the bhikkhu applies wise attention as he lives while properly utilizing his dwelling place only for the purpose of dispelling the cold, the heat, the sting of gadflies, mosquitoes, the wind, and to ward off heat, snakes, and other creeping things, as well as to protect himself from rainstorms and rough weather, and for the purpose of practicing in seclusion. In seclusion, that is important for us, to seclude ourselves. So you might not even have walls. So what some bhikkhus do in the forest, if they don't have walls, they will take extra robes that they might have and hang them through ropes and make walls to cover themselves so people could not see, in case there might be some villagers or some passers-by, because some people might just come to pay respect. Ultimately, why do we do all these extra steps or rules? Not to have the lay people lose their faith in the Dhamma, in the triple gem. That's it. If you want to narrow it down, that's it. We are trying to be considerate so the lay people do not lose their faith in the sasana, in the triple gem. That's why we have to walk in a certain way, we have to talk in a certain way, we behave in a certain way. Grown men in society, especially today, we have to. That's the ideal. That's the intention of Lord Buddha establishing the bhikkhuhood in the first place. As a result, the mental contaminants that create agitation and imbalance for some other person who does not properly utilize his requisites thus simply do not occur for the bhikkhu who lives while properly utilizing. So, and what bhikkhus are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished by enduring adivasana, pahatabba? Here, bhikkhus, you may think of a bhikkhu who applies wise attention as he lives while patiently enduring the cold, the heat, the sting of gadflies, mosquitoes, the wind, and to ward off heat, snakes, and the touch of other creeping things, as well as being subjected to offensive remarks and hurtful comments by others, which are sooner or later going to come. He perseveres with tolerance any and all feelings that result from being harmed by unavoidable physical harm that he is exposed to, be they sharp, terrible, piercing, racking, torturing, mortifying, that could even end his life. As a result, the mental contaminants that create agitation and imbalance for some other person who does not patiently endure these difficult to bear experiences simply do not occur for the bhikkhu who lives while patiently enduring. If you're maintaining that patiently enduring attitude, these asavas will not take over. This person is still struggling. They might not still be an arahant, but you're still holding on to the reins, the steering wheel. You're not letting go. Because you let go, you're going to crash. Because there's so many reasons that you start questioning. You look at others, well, they have a better life than me. They have more resources than me. They have this, I don't have this. All these things start coming up. And then mana comes in. Not mara, mana. Conceit. Compare and contrast. Which is a poison to the mind, to the heart. And the bhikkhu might not disrobe, but go ahead and live a lifestyle that is unbecoming. Or they might disrobe, even though they had a good, solid intention to begin with. But they let go. They did not endure the difficulties. If you have a body, you're going to suffer, sooner or later. Take good care of it. Give it medicine, give it protection as best as you can. But ultimately, it's going to do what it's going to do. Because the key thing is to watch out for is the agitation in the mind, which is the opposite of what samadhi does. If you want to attain arahantship or just any calm state, the mind cannot be agitated. You can't. That's why you see in some retreats or some meditation practices, the person on the outside looks okay, calm, in fact, oh my God, he's a saint. That kind of an impression. But then something happens, an ant steps on their toe, and they lose it. They lose it. They get angry. They lust after things. Something is off there. Remember Vimansaka Sutta always. Go back to that sutta. Read it, listen to it. Because these are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished by enduring. And what bhikkhus are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through avoiding? Parivajjana pahatabba. Here, bhikkhus, you may think of a bhikkhu who applies wise attention as he lives while avoiding a wild elephant, a wild horse, a wild bull, a wild dog, a serpent, an uneven road, a hedge of thorns, a pit, a precipice, the pool at the entrance of towns where men and women gather, a cesspit. So you will intentionally avoid things that will create disharmony, that will create agitation in the mind, either yours or someone else's. We have rules about, for example, as bhikkhus, not to be in the water splashing around. Like if you're in the water, in the pool, or in the ocean, or in the sea, how are you going to move around without splashing? Right? Unless, I mean, even a fish has to move. All right? But there was a reason for that. There's actually a number of splashes, as long as it's not for pleasure. Because there's a rule, and whatever rules were established, it was simply to protect. It was never done by Lord Buddha because he wanted to, like, yeah, go, more rules, more rules. No. People were coming, usually lay people were coming complaining about the bhikkhus. King Bimbisara was trying to go with his people into the hot springs in Rajagaha. Well, he tries going there in the morning. Well, guess who's there? The bhikkhus. Splashing around, he waits, he's the king. But because he was also Sotapanna, he was so respectful of the bhikkhus, he says, okay, well, I'll wait until the Bhantes are done swimming. They're splashing, playing, this and that, so he thinks, okay, I guess they're going to be playing or swimming for a while, so let me go back to the palace. He goes and he says, okay, now it's nighttime, evening, let me go now. He goes there, another group of bhikkhus are there splashing around. Yeah. So he's kind of like, and it's the king, I mean, he's restraining himself in fact, the bhikkhus are not. He goes to Lord Buddha and Lord Buddha sees what, he sees his mind. And the king is like holding himself, is like, I don't want to say it. Is it gossiping? Is it slander? And Lord Buddha says, okay, tell me. And he tells him. He says, okay. The king goes and he calls the bhikkhus and he scolds them and gives them a new rule. So we have all these rules are there because some bhikkhu or bhikkhus were simply indecent, unreasonable, careless. Inconsiderate. I mean, even a child knows, okay, let them play, So, in this case, that's one of the reasons why I said the entrance of towns where there would be pools where men and women would gather, especially if there's women. Now, if you're going there, women are going to be talking, because especially if you're a healthy young man in your 20s, people are going to talk. They might not be talking about you, even, or giggle. They might not be giggling about you, but you heard those, and you're going to be thinking about them. And you're going to walk away, you're going to go to your kuti after the Pindapada, guess what you're thinking about? Or they might actually start thinking about you. Okay? Many bhikkhus in Thailand and other places were disrobed because they fell in love with one of the locals. Yeah. And they got married. So all of these things we have to be very considerate of. And no, you're not throwing yourself in harm's way. You're doing it responsibly. So if you see a serpent, a snake, a cobra, a tiger, you see a tiger's footprints in the mud in front of you, you're not going to say, I'm going to go ahead and test my adhitthana. That would be foolish. That would be foolish. Further, with consistent application of wise attention, the bhikkhu lives while avoiding to sit in unsuitable seats, or wandering without consideration of others, or being inappropriate, or associating with evil friends, as well as avoiding to endanger the lives of his wise companions in the holy life, or in giving them a reason to suspect him of evil actions or unwholesome intentions. As a result, the mental contaminants that create agitation and imbalance for some other person who does not avoid these situations do not occur for the bhikkhu who lives while avoiding. So, there were cases where people in Sri Lanka, one incident I know of, a bhikkhu was walking and there was a wild elephant he encountered in one of the trails, and he would live alone in his kuti. What happened was basically he decided to send metta to the elephant. The problem was that he was too close and he probably overestimated his skill level, because the wild elephant charged and stomped on him. In fact, broke his pelvic bone. And he was stuck there for at least a day and a half. No one was there. So he had to crawl his way back, at least to his kuti. And when he did not show up for his pindapada, the villagers sent some people to check on him. That's how you know if the bhikkhu is dead or sick, when they don't show up for pindapada and they haven't given you forewarning. Oh, by the way, I'm fasting this week. If there isn't that warning and they don't show up, you have to go check. So until the end of his life, he had one leg actually shorter than the other. So he would be given slippers that were, because the body, the bone healed, but he had to struggle with that. So I don't know how the Venerable, what the situation was, but he was known to say that he tried sending metta to the animal. You have to be extremely, extremely established and have seen evidence enough to be able to take such a stance. Even Lord Buddha is warning us from overestimating our skill level. Use wisdom. Get out of the way. Run into the woods where the elephant doesn't go, doesn't come. Step away from the trail where you know tigers walk. Unless you're an arahant already, where you really are looking for an opportunity to die. Honestly. So, and what bhikkhus are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through uprooting? Vinodana pahatabba. Here, bhikkhus, you may think of a bhikkhu who applies wise attention as he lives while removing any arisen sensual thoughts, as he does not tolerate them at all, and instead constantly focuses on destroying them as he ceaselessly uproots them. Further, with consistent radical reflection, o yoniso manasikara, the bhikkhu lives while removing any arisen hateful thoughts. So the first one was sensual thoughts. Next one is hateful. We're talking about vyapada. Ill will, as he does not tolerate them at all, and instead constantly focuses on destroying them as he ceaselessly uproots them. So if you feel some resentment, anger, even when you're sitting to meditate, on retreat, you're not immune from those feelings, right? And the anger might not be about, it might be about, usually about, it is, about some other meditator closing the door strongly or opening it too much, turning on the lights and snoring maybe, I don't know. All these things that happen, or bodily noises. There might be hatred or ill will towards that other person, but also be sensitive to notice if there's any hatred or harmful thoughts towards yourself. That's the big one, because you're now going to be suffocating that. Those become wounds, deep wounds. So that's why I want you to smile all the time and forgive yourself, okay? Always. Further, any consistent radical, further with consistent radical reflection, the bhikkhu lives while removing any arisen harmful thoughts, as he does not tolerate them at all and instead constantly focuses on destroying them as he ceaselessly uproots them. Further, with consistent radical reflection, the bhikkhu lives while removing any arisen evil and unwholesome thoughts, as he does not tolerate them at all and instead, so this is the whole package, any kind of evil, unwholesome thought, constantly focuses on destroying them as he ceaselessly eradicates them. So you don't have a tolerance for the evil thoughts. You don't say, yeah, but you have a reason to hate this person. Okay, I'll keep this. No, they are all completely not tolerated. No matter how many excuses you might have. Yeah, but he killed my brother, my father. I should hate him. No. Deal with that hatred. Plus, you're only looking at this life. You don't know what your brother or father has done. This is not just it, you know. There's a bigger picture behind it. As a result, the mental contaminants that create agitation and imbalance for some other person who does not remove these negative states of mind simply do not occur for the bhikkhu who lives by ceaselessly uprooting them. Bhikkhus, these are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished through uprooting. And what bhikkhus are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished by cultivating? Bhavana pahatabba. Here, bhikkhus, you may think of a bhikkhu who applies wise attention as he lives while cultivating the awakening factor of mindfulness, supported by seclusion, dispassion, cessation, and maturing in full release. So here you're going to see Lord Buddha talking about the sambojjhangas or sattabojjhangas, 7 factors of awakening. When we hear cultivation, that is what we are talking about. It's impossible to get on the path to Nibbana without working and cultivating the 7 factors of awakening. It will not work. Even dana and sila will not work on their own. You must apply bojjhangas. Further, with consistent radical reflection, the bhikkhu lives while cultivating the awakening factor of investigation of states, supported by seclusion, dispassion, cessation, and maturing in full release. Further, with consistent radical reflection, the bhikkhu lives while cultivating the awakening factor of energy, awakening factor of joy, I'm abbreviating, awakening factor of joy, awakening factor of tranquility of mind, awakening factor of stability of the mind. Further, with consistent radical reflection, the bhikkhu lives while developing the awakening factor of equanimity of the mind, upekkha, supported by seclusion, fading away of passion, cessation, ending with the surrender into full release. As a result, the mental contaminants that create agitation and imbalance for some other person who does not develop these lofty states of mind simply do not occur for the bhikkhu who lives through cultivating. Bhikkhus, these are the mental contaminants that should be relinquished by cultivating. Now, bhikkhus, when the bhikkhu surrenders the mental contaminants that are to be relinquished through seeing, through restraint, through properly utilizing, through endurance or enduring, through avoiding, through uprooting, and the mental contaminants that are to be relinquished by cultivating, then he is recognized as that bhikkhu who lives having restrained all mental contaminants, having conquered all craving and destroyed those binding fetters, and with his complete penetration into the nature of conceit, he is rightfully known as the one who has put an end to suffering. These are the words spoken by the Blessed One, and those bhikkhus delighted in being satisfied while listening to the words of the Blessed One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. If there are the asavas, there is avidya. If there is avidya, there's no nibbana. The tool, your weapon of choice, should be yoniso manasikara every time. Wise attention. So you have that. Isn't that great? So I'll stop here and see if you have any questions. It's a wonderful sutta. It's loaded. I went, even though I took 2 hours almost, it easily could take 2 more. Easy. I was rushing. It's a wonderful sutta, and so I highly recommend you reading it, listening to it. I've recorded this some years ago, but not my translation fully. This is a complete retranslation of it. But still, there's the other one that I had recorded some years ago you could listen to, or just look at any of the versions online. There's so many versions, different websites and things.
Thank you, Bhante. Lovely rendition of this discourse. In the Dasana, there is something which is always transferred as, in the seeing, there's only the seen. Somehow, in this statement, we are caught up with our likes and dislikes, our appreciation to interpret it the way we like to see it. So, is this in the seeing, there's only the seen, suitable, or is it better to be neutral in the seeing, there's only a seen? Like it's just a scene. there's no interpretation to it. So this is one of the questions. And the other point which I like to ask you is about the sound of the birds chirping yesterday. We see anicca in it. As it arises, it fades. And it's subject to how we prolong the conversation in our head. What bird is it? What color is it? Where is it from? So I like to get Bhante's viewpoint and explanation on these two matters. Thank you.
The first is you offered a different protocol, I guess, of instead of looking at this seeing as just seeing, instead of the, what was it, the one who sees?
Seeing as only a scene.
A scene, yes, yes. All, so these are going, the way you're coming, you already processed it. It went through your filters already. It already is tinged by your views. And as it's leaving your lips, it is very much stamped with your stamp of approval. Your thinking, your perceptions, your concepts. And so long as you're not an arahant, guess what those concepts are based on? Exactly. So, this is what the mind does. It plays these games. It's looking for alternatives. The teaching that Lord Buddha gave to Bahya is complete. In fact, it was so complete that Bahya became the fastest arahant with the shortest discourse. Even the other arahants around him, they couldn't believe because they thought he was just a hermit. Oh, by the way, Lord Buddha, the hermit that you were teaching earlier, some cow came and gouged him and killed him on the spot. He says he was not just a hermit. Go take his body and cremate your fellow companion in the holy life. He completed his task. He became an arahant. Now, we, 2,600 years later, how many times have you personally, I know how many times I might have gone over Bahya Sutta, which is one of my, if not the most favorite sutta ever for me. How many times have you read it? I'm sure many times. How come we haven't become arahants yet? See? The mind is always seeking a different form of interpreting it using cognitive instruments, meaning concepts, meaning essentially sanya. What Lord Buddha was telling, instructing Bahya was, Bahya, throw out your sanyas. That is the obstacle. In fact, that is the thing which was identifying the bird as a lovely bird, ugly bird, tall bird, short bird, lovely sound, horrible sound, all these things. It's our sanya, has nothing to do with the bird. It's us. At that moment, the way I see it, the way I understand it, Bahya was able to relinquish sanya. Remember, sanya viratassa nasanti gantha. When a person has let go of sanya, perceptions, for such a person there cannot be any more bonds, shackles, fetters, ropes to tie him up with. Now, if you have that ability to release yourself from sanya, that takes us to the second verse. Panya vimuttassa nisanti moha. For a person who is released through wisdom, there cannot be any delusion, moha. So who's the enemy now? Sanya. And we're communicating in sanya. That's why everybody who came to Lord Buddha asking about what is the Dhamma, what is Nibbana? Tell us Nibbana, describe Nibbana. So he would end up finally using the language of the negative. which uproots the sannyas, because your mind is always trying to latch on, grab, upadana, not cling, to ideas. Because if I agree with you with what you said, yes, Ravi, that I agree with that, or yes, I think that is absolutely correct, what did we gain? Just one extra sanya for us to carry some more. So I hope that answers or addresses the first question. The second, there was another one, right? Yes, I kind of hinted at it in the first response, but I like to take it a little bit further, if you allow me. We, by nature, love stories. We love weaving stories, making stories. In essence, we have not grown up that much from sitting on grandmother's lap and asking her to tell us stories. I use that image because that comes to mind, because I used to beg my grandmother to tell me stories. And she would tell wonderful stories. But the mind is equipped with this longing, desire to constantly tell and want to be told stories. So the sound of the bird is just, come on, it's just a sound. What is that? Give me something more fleshy. If you've ever seen a hamburger or a sandwich, you have the bread cut open, they put whatever they want to put inside. Let's say if you are a meat eater, they put the meat, close it, okay. They present that to you. You look at it and you say, where's the rest? The rest meaning the lettuce, tomato, pickles, onions, this, that, cheese, da, 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 da. Now the sandwich got bigger. There's a story that is more colorful. Even your eyes crave that. Right? You have an orchestra playing in front of you, and the flute is playing, or the violin is playing, the melody. Sooner or later, there's this longing in you, like, okay, when's the rest gonna come in? When's the rest of the musicians gonna be playing and joining in? I'm kind of bored. You won't say that, but the mind is. Hence, the sound of the bird is insufficient. Even if it is just that, like if you go into the desert, that's another reason why ancient, at times or even now, people would go to the desert or into wilderness where there isn't too many unexpected societal sounds, cars, people talking, music. Eventually your mind treats it as white noise because it's monotonous. There's no story until a poet goes there and starts to make things up and ruins the whole scene. There goes poetry for you. But a meditator goes there, especially to a desert. Desert is far more preferred than other sounds because the desert would have a lot less ingredients. Maybe the wind of the sands, something like that. So now you are far able to detect the sannyas. Because there we were adding sannyas. We were adding color to the bird. Oh, it's a beautiful bird. Oh. We start becoming very creative. Oh, that bird must be actually waiting for her mate or his mate, going to build a nest. All these stories start coming up. Where are they coming up from? Sanya. Has nothing to do with reality. Reality can only happen now. And that's what Lord Buddha was trying to say to Bahya. When seeing, just see. Don't add any layers. But that, for some reason, we apparently viscerally think of as poor. That's why that sandwich seemed like, without anything else, that sandwich seemed, it's not impressive. It's, where's the rest? So when you're hearing the sound of the bird, you're asking, where's the rest of the bird? Just the sound? Where's the yellow color, the blue color, the feathers, the other things? That's the human endeavor. Years ago, there was the black and white TV. And then they worked hard, and then they built what? Color TV. They don't stop there, so it's always trying to 3D, 4D, 6D, I don't know what D. One day you're going to go enter into your TV. Right? Hologram. So, it's all from Sanya, the way I understand it. And if you have the attachment to Sanya, we're not going to go deep. You're not even on the surface. Break free from that. And that's why this meditation is so powerful, because you're not adding anything. You're feeling. It's your feeling, it's no one else's. When you're feeling metta, it is your feeling. That's why I have to constantly check, double check, triple check. Make you uncomfortable with my questions. Until you really come down and say, you know, I am putting something like a layer on top of this other thing, which is the big issue. There is a lack of forgiveness. I hate myself sometimes. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people have a difficulty, resistance to metta. Until that moment comes where they crack the egg, they break free, and tears come out. Ah, it's a beautiful thing to observe and witness. Beautiful. But it's your experience. You didn't add anything to it. Even your spiritual friend, I never tell you to go ahead and visualize, add texture. No! You just need to use them for a little bit just to know that it's being sent in a certain direction, so you have a target. Eventually, I'll let you drop that spiritual friend completely. And you carry metta with you wherever you go. Your metta, your experiencing of it. No sannyas. Okay. All right. Let us transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you all, as well as your loved ones.